Welcome to the Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a production of LibertyNation.com, hosted by Mark Angelides.
The year 2020 will long be remembered for many aspects, whether it remains in the mind as the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, the year of questionable election results, the year of Black Lives Matter and riots in the streets. There is, as they say, something for everyone. But perhaps the greatest legacy of this nefarious year will be the shift towards tyranny and the destruction of freedoms. Will we look back at 2020 as the year that it all started to go wrong for those who respect the idea that we have inalienable rights, freedoms that should not be subject to government whim and control? This is not purely a US-centric issue. Across the world, your rights are being trampled in the name of good governance. From the UK to Europe and to the Americas, there appears to be a concerted, globalist effort to get free people used to the idea that their lives can and will be subject to state intervention. And it's only going to get worse. This Thanksgiving, we've been told that families and friends cannot gather together to celebrate the most American of holidays. Yet the same politicians who slam the public for breaking COVID rules continue their lives, flaunting the very regulations they have set upon the people. Governor Gavin Newsom of California dining at a $600 a plate restaurant with members of the Californian Medical Association, all maskless, offer a scant apology for his own rule breaking. Nancy Pelosi, maskless again in a hair salon, belittles those in the public eye who do not wear a mask even when outdoors. You see, these rules and restrictions, these moves against freedom are not for them. They're for you and your family, the small people who have no recourse against the mounting hypocrisy. And the restrictions, they don't end there. The ability to put food on the table is under attack. Businesses involved in voluntary transactions with individuals are forced to either close or pay hefty fines, and they even face imprisonment in some cases. You're expected to pay your mortgage, your bills, and feed your family on a subsistence check from the government. That said government refuses to pass the stimulus check without stuffing billions of dollars of pork for their favorite Marxist-inspired causes. And what of the UK? The country has been in various states of lockdown for almost a year, with some bars and restaurants shutting their doors forever. Millions of souls are struggling to make a pittance as the Boris Johnson government deems their companies unsafe. And a fresh tyranny is brewing on the stove. Latest reports suggest that Prime Minister Johnson is toying with the idea of a freedom pass. And as with most government-concocted schemes, its very name is misleading. The freedom pass would enable people to go to bars, return to work, walk around without a mask. But what's the cost? The bearer of the pass must submit to twice-weekly testing. Let's recall for a moment that the tests currently being used are incredibly poor at actually testing for COVID-19. The Lancet, a well-respected journal, suggests that false positives could be as high as 33%. It's all too reminiscent of East Germany and requests for supposedly free citizens to produce their papers on demand. But there's a more precise historical precursor, the South African Dom Pass. This was an internal passport that was used to restrict black people from even being in an area reserved for whites. If the offender could not produce their papers, they were immediately taken into custody and moved to a more rural location. It was the very definition of discrimination. And sadly, it looks like 2020 is the year that this discrimination returns with Boris Johnson's Freedom Pass. But where are the warriors who would usually be on hand to expose, to question and to fight for these freedoms that we're losing? Where are the journalists that in past times would have pulled at every thread to unravel the web of disinformation that has led us to these restrictions, like meat lambs to the slaughter? Sadly, it appears they have sided against the people and joined forces with the controllers in espousing contradiction after contradiction, without even batting an eyelash. As ever, history has valuable lessons to teach. The Russian writer, playwright and journalist Isaac Babel once said of his life under the Stalinists, "Today, a man only talks freely to his wife at night, with the blankets pulled over his head." Babel was initially a grandee, lauded everywhere in Russia and given special status, but it was not to last. Despite having family in France and being permitted to travel there regularly, Babel appeared not to consider the heavy-handed state to be a threat to him personally. In some ways we can see that he trusted the government that because of his exalted status, the favourable situation would continue. This is something our journalists who practice political mendacity would do well to consider today. Just because you're exalted right now doesn't mean a fickle and pernicious government has an obligation to treat you thusly in the future. In 1939, Babel was arrested and taken away. He was tortured and beaten into confessing his crimes and naming close friends as conspirators with him. After 8 months behind bars, he was executed. His last recorded words were, quote, "I am innocent. I have never been a spy. I have never allowed any action against the Soviet Union. I accused myself falsely. I was forced to make false accusations against myself and others. I am asking for only one thing. Let me finish my work." End quote. When modern journalists play political games, they do themselves and us a major disservice. Who will be there to speak for them and to demand their freedom if no one knows the truth of the situation, of what's really going on? By covering up and obfuscating and denying in the name of political preference, they risk a lot more than just their jobs. It seems we have not come so far from the days of yellow journalism, but let's hope that we're still a long way off the tyranny that was so prevalent and pernicious in the 20th century. But with 2020, who knows?
Go deeper on the topic discussed in this video, head on over to one of these links here or go to our Liberty Nation Roku channel. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Liberty.
The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, a LibertyNation.com production.
Available at Libsyn, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, on Roku, and other fine podcast providers.